Welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. This is episode number 109, alongside the peripatetic Ryan Sir. I'm Don Helbig. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm exhausted. And the subject of this show is why. Because I just got back home from a long trip doing haunt stuff in Florida. But before we get into that, let me remind you to follow us on all your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Google, Spotify, you know the drill. Follow us on X at attractions_GRP and subscribe on YouTube by hitting the little subscribe button thing.
Now, Ryan, before we get into this, as we record, today is National Cheeseburger Day. So I want to ask you, of the fast food chains out there, who do you think has the best cheeseburger?
Five Guys.
Five Guys, okay.
What do you think?
I've got them number 2 on my list. I love Burger King.
Burger King is good. Burger King and Wendy's are both like underrated, I feel like.
They are. Five Guys are really good, but I just thought I'd ask because it's National Cheeseburger Day as we record. But let's get back to what this episode is going to be about. You were in Central Florida, otherwise known as the Orlando area, for the different Halloween events. And kind of before we get started, what is it about that area that draws you there for their Halloween events?
Well, they really do set the standard for the Halloween events. The two main events that I was able to attend was Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, which is at Magic Kingdom, and that masters what most parks do during the day around here. The fun by day, trick-or-treating, fun costumes, parades, stuff like that. Then there's Halloween Horror Nights, which is the ultimate scary, immersive kind of event. So both of those are right next door to each other, which is rather convenient for when you go down there.
Now, you mentioned Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. So what were your first impressions of this year's Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party?
Wow, this is expensive. I paid a pretty penny. We went so early. We went on Labor Day, and it was like $150 or so. But it's a premium event. You pay a premium price. We did the same thing for the Christmas party, and no regrets about it, really. I rather enjoyed it. Like the Christmas party, it's not something you would want to do every year, because that would be a little excessive. But with that being said, did we get our money's worth? I think so. Here's just one of the shots that I took. This is of Main Street USA while we're waiting for the parade to come by. So I talked about this, and I speculated this, and I still stand by it, where the Christmas event and the Halloween event are the exact same thing. It's just one's Christmas and one's Halloween. I thought that was kind of funny. They have a great formula, so I don't blame them,
No, it works for them. So did you have a favorite part of the event? Maybe there was a specific parade float that you liked, or was there any character interaction, or maybe it was the treats that you got?
I think my favorite part of the whole event was the fireworks show. But if I had to narrow it down and say like one thing is one like that I really enjoyed seeing, was they had a lot of Haunted Mansion tributes in the parade, including grave diggers that would swing around these shovels and spark them against the ground, as well as the hitchhiking ghosts and people representing the people in the ballroom and stuff. I really enjoyed that. I love Haunted Mansion, and I love how, no pun intended, they can bring those characters to life in the parade. But let's talk about the trick-or-treating, though.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
My gosh. So they give you this bag for trick-or-treating that's like kind of the size of like a Lululemon bag, like a real small shopping bag. If you go to 3 candy stops, that thing's full already. They hand out candy by like the peanut scooper size. Like they scoop it, put their hand on top of it, and dump it into your bag. What's funny, though, is I had a bunch of people tell me like, oh, I heard they're super stingy with the candy. We only did a couple of candy stops because we didn't want to carry around all this candy because it was so extensive.
So what kind of candy were you getting?
So all of it was pretty standard. It was you got your Snickers, there's Twix, There was a bunch of gummy stuff, which was fantastic, including gummy lifesavers. All the M&M Mars stuff. So M&M's.
So the good stuff, like like you mentioned, the Snickers bars.
Snickers is my favorite candy bar, and yeah, we got Snickers.
So yeah, so not these little Starburst pieces. I mean, this was really good pieces of candy.
Yeah, not only was it good candy, but it was like a lot of it. Very, very enjoyable. Let's put it that way. Very enjoyable.
Okay, and how do you think this event? We'll go on with the trick or treat stuff a little bit more about that.
Right. So the thing about trick or treating is, in a lot of ways, and I just want to throw this up there so you can kind of see the environment that they have there. But in a lot of ways, the trick or treating is kind of like a weird dynamic because you see these lines that just pour out of these places, and you're like, I have to wait in line to trick or treat. This is insane. And then you realize, first of all, the line is like just constantly moving because they're scooping the stuff. But you walk in and you have like a quarter of a pound of candy by the time you walk out. Some of the stops actually have 2 spots where you get candy, so you really get your money's worth out of that one. So I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun,
Let's talk about the live entertainment. The times that I've done that event, I enjoyed like the Sanderson sisters. I thought that was, really well done. So what were your thoughts of that?
So what's funny about that is it's back to my theme of this is Christmas, but it's Halloween this time. I had never had any. I knew that the Sanderson sisters were there. I knew that it was the big show, but I never spoiled it. I never watched it. But the premise of the Mickey's Christmas party, whatever the show's called, the Christmas party is, Mickey and Minnie are throwing a Christmas party, and like all their friends start showing up, like Los Cabreros and all that stuff. This is the same thing. It's the Sanderson sisters, but all the evil people show up. Right. One thing that comes to mind is Oogie Boogie showed up from the Nightmare Before Christmas franchise. My girlfriend is now obsessed with Oogie Boogie and has bought an Oogie Boogie t-shirt and an Oogie Boogie cutie clamp thing for her jacket. She thinks Oogie Boogie's like the cutest thing ever. But they had like Maleficent show up and Captain Hook showed up. So it's weird seeing them on the same plane. Like I can swallow Oogie Boogie and Maleficent being there at the same time, but Captain Hook's a different kind of evil. So it was kind of fun to see him on stage with them.
Yeah, it's always fun to see the villains, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, apparently they're adding Villain's Land allegedly to Magic Kingdom, and they're definitely adding a villain show where the Cars ride was in Disney's Hollywood Studios behind Rock and Roller Coaster. So that'll be kind of fun to see how they present that.
Oh yeah. So how do you think this event appeals to both the families and you got the scare seekers down there at this time of year, but how do you see it? Why do you think it appeals to both those families, the scare seekers, given that it's got that not so scary theme?
You'd be surprised how many people that are grown adults buy a ticket to this. And again, this is not a cheap event. If you go closer to Halloween, it's $200 for a ticket. But they go because the ride lines are short. So I think that would be the appeal of somebody that's like a thrill seeker. You can get on Space Mountain in 10 or 15 minutes. By the way, Space Mountain has the lights completely off, which is awesome. But you do that. There's like a Monsters Laugh floor overlay for Halloween. The spinning teacups have a Halloween overlay where it's like they do fog and stuff in there. That's really cool. So you can have like a thrill seeker kind of event for those that want to be scared or whatever. While the more fun stuff, the more family friendly stuff is a little bit more widespread. Now, I would encourage anybody. I always say enjoy the parks however you want, but if you're looking for short lines, like it's way cheaper to get like Genie Plus than to go to this event. But just let the kid come out to you, watch the parade, watch the shows. Like we hardly ride anything, while we're there because we wanted to see the Sanderson sisters and all that. Well, one thing that's weird though is a lot of the entertainment doesn't start till like 9 because they wait till it gets dark. So there was nothing to do because you get in at 4. We were blacked out on our passes, but we were able to get in at 4 with this, although the event technically starts at 7. And we rode a bunch of rides and stuff just because they don't have the first Sanderson sister show until 8 something, and then the fireworks were at 10, and then the parade was at 9:15 and 11:15 and so on. So we actually did get to enjoy a lot more stuff that's, say, more normal for Magic Kingdom during this event than we did Christmas.
So, what advice would you give to a first-time visitor, who wants to get the most out of their Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party?
Well, the first bit of advice I would give is buy your tickets early. One of the main reasons why we did this is because last year we happened to be down there. Well, we did the same trip last year. We did Halloween Horror Nights and so on, and we didn't know much about Mickey's Not So Scary, but we're like, oh, this looks cool. You know what? Let's do it. Let's spend the money, and we could not get a ticket to it. So if you want to do it in June or July, buy your ticket. That's what I did. The other thing
Good
is,
advice.
everyone says to watch the second parade. That's at 11:15 because it's less crowded. I agree with that. There's only like a few things to do. They're big, but there's only a few if you break it down because it may seem overwhelming. Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily concentrate on the rides. I mean, you do you, but definitely see the Sanderson sisters, watch the parade, do some trick or treating. You don't even have to go to all the stops. There's like 20 stops. But the other thing is, and I think most people have this figured out, is, as I mentioned, you can get in at 4:00. So you want to be on the side. Not even, you can go all the way to the park, even past ticket and transportation and everything. And it's kind of hot standing there, especially when we went on Labor Day, but they'll start letting people in. They say 4. It was like 3:50 when they opened the gates, and you can get in and you can get those rides and you can pick up the merchandise. The merchandise sells out really quickly. So I think they have an allotment for the day and then they go. So we bought merchandise like first thing. We bought our t-shirts and she got her Not So Scary Mickey ears and so on.
That's a good tip, to get the merchandise first.
Yeah. And don't go crazy on the merchandise like I did. Although the merchandise looks awesome this year, especially.
All right. Well, after that, you experienced Universal's Halloween Horror Nights.
Yes.
So talk about that event a little bit.
So Halloween Horror Nights is the scary side of stuff. I've described this before on the show, but Horror Nights is a lot more about, it's less about boo and then you jump. I mean, it has that. But it's more about immersing you in what feels like a horror movie. And the cool part about it is that they usually do like 3 intellectual property houses. This year it was Quiet Place, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and Insidious. So those are like walking through the movie. And I'll go into detail, especially about Ghostbusters, which was my favorite maze. But they also have their own, where they do ones based off of old horror flicks. They call it CinemaSins. CinemaSins 2. It was actually a sequel. They had a Goblins one where they created their own lore with that. They had a museum-themed one where they had a whole backstory with that. So either you can walk through a movie that you may be familiar with, or you can learn a whole new story and you can experience this movie, on your own. But there's also shows and there's food too, and they got weird food there. I'll tell you that much.
So what stood out to you the most at this year's Halloween Horror Nights? Any particular haunted house or scary zone that really delivered that fright factor that maybe you weren't expecting?
So I will say that the scariest one is probably Insidious. That seems like that's most people's favorite. My personal favorite, however, was Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I don't find any of this stuff like particular. I get jump scared every once in a while, like everybody else, but I don't get super scared. But I really liked the Frozen Empire movie, and I'm glad I rewatched it a few days before I went, because you really just feel like you're in that movie. I thought that the whole house would be like, oh, it's going to be ice themed, and they've got the guy with the horns, and he's going to be no. You spoiler alert, skip ahead about 1 minute if you don't want to hear this, but you actually go into Ray's occult books, and you go into the firehouse, and you all that stuff, So it was really like walking into the movie,
So Universal, very well known for its detailed and immersive sets. Which house had the most immersive theming this year?
I'm gonna actually go with Insidious for that. Insidious was in a soundstage. I prefer the houses in sound stages because they got really high ceilings and stuff. Even last year they had a house called Blood Moon where they had like a bell tower and stuff. Like just their ability to build these sets and stuff to only use for about 8 weeks is really incredible. But yeah, the Insidious one was very good with having a ceiling, and so it's not like, one thing that takes me out of haunted houses a lot is super themed. The floor is themed, the wall is themed, the other wall is themed. You look up and you can see like, you can see the ceiling. Yeah, for some reason that really bothers me. But and they do that too, and that has to do with like fire suppression sprinkler systems and so on. But they always have a lot of rooms where they want to enclose it, and they do. And the compromise they have with the fire department is they have to run the sprinklers all the way down. So they put a lot of money into certain rooms, but they did that with CinemaSins in several places, and they Insidious had a lot of it as well.
So how would you compare, the atmosphere of Halloween Horror Nights to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween? Now, one's intense, one's family, but did you maybe find one was a little more enjoyable for a specific audience?
Yeah, I mean, the audiences are completely opposite. I will tell you this, that there is an advantage to the Mickey's Not So Scary, and it's because even completely sold out as that event typically is, it feels like Magic Kingdom isn't that busy. It's not to the point where you can walk on like every ride or anything like that, but if you want to get a spot for the fireworks, you don't have to get there an hour early. You can kind of just make your way there 15 minutes early. Heck, for the Christmas event, we were like right in front of the stage, in front of the castle for that show. It was just a lot more manageable. While Horror Nights, even when they're not busy, is just shoulder to shoulder people. And if you lose your group, it's like, I don't have a way home, But
Right.
the appeal is going to be different. The energy is really, really strong with Horror Nights. But it's, it's scarier. That's their intention for Horror Nights, and it's more fun for Mickey's. They're both fun in different ways.
Yep. So for those who might be a little hesitant about the intensity of Halloween Horror Nights, what would you suggest that they do to prepare to enjoy the experience without getting, maybe too overwhelmed?
Well, they always have intellectual properties. So it's one of those things where if you watch the movie, I mean, Ghostbusters probably wasn't the best example because that's a comedy. But if you watch Insidious and you for real just did not enjoy the movie because you don't like the scares and it creeped you out and stuff, this probably isn't the event for you. But I will tell you that you have to be conscious of the fact that you're in a soundstage or you're in a tent, and this is just a work of art you're walking through. None of these people are going to hurt you. None of them are going to touch you. Um, I don't suffer from like a fear of going through haunted houses, so I don't want to downplay people who do, but I feel like most people who go through haunted houses end up just really having a good time.
Now, one of the things you were really excited about before you went down that you were talking to me with was the Unmasking the Horror tour. So talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so I did the 3-house tour of Unmasking the Horror. So we did CinemaSins. I have to jog my memory. We did CinemaSins, which is CinemaSins is their like their classic horror one. We did the Triplets of Terror, and we did the museum. Now I'll tell you this. So this is my second time doing the tour. So essentially, there's 10 houses. There's a 3-house tour where you do 3 of the houses, and there's a 6-house tour where you do 6 other houses. There's always one that doesn't have a tour. It's usually an IP one for legal reasons or whatever. I don't know if I'd have the patience to do 6 of these in a day, because 3 is like 2.5, 3 hours in some cases. But when I first did this last year, I was really excited because I thought they would show us a lot of the tech side of stuff, but they kind of do, but that's not what it's about. The reason why the tour is cool is because they walk you through the storyline. They show you details that you would not notice walking through the house. And then if you go through it again, you can appreciate these details. You can understand the story better, and you can point stuff out to your friends and so on. So that was if you look at this picture here, this is from, I believe it's Triplets of Terror. This is the one that was in a sound stage. There's little Easter eggs too. So look at the see the address, Don? 3324.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, take my word for it. 3324 is the address. So this was Halloween Horror Nights 33, and the year is 2024. So little stuff like that. And they also hide stuff throughout the houses for people on the tours to find. It was frogs last year. It's snails this year. And so whoever finds it, I mean, you don't want a prize or anything, but it's kind of a fun thing to do.
So the Unmasking the Horror Tour, how many people are with you in that group?
Upwards of 10 or so with a tour guide. They give you a little radio so you can hear them, even because sometimes in these haunted houses, the person that's leading the tour is like kind of like around the corner or something, and they're describing something to you, and you just can't all be in there at the same time. So they'll be able to hear you through that.
Okay, were there any behind the scenes moments that maybe surprised you?
Yeah. So I don't even know if they'd be particularly happy with me bringing this up, but they did it to themselves. So with the behind the or Unmasking the Horror Tour, there are some things you can take pictures of and some things you can't. And that was how it was last year too. So basically legal goes through. It's probably a copyright thing for the most part. But they'll often be like, hey, this room's good. Take all the pictures you want. Next room, no pictures. This room, you can take pictures of anything except for the art on the walls, or instruments hanging. I don't know why they do it, but they do. And usually the tour guides claim to not know either. There was a room where we weren't allowed to take pictures, and they admitted that it was because they had a decapitated dog. And there was a reused prop, and they said that when it was used in a different house, people got really upset about it because they just didn't want to see it. But the creative decided to use it again, and the tour guide was speculating that they probably didn't want them to allow pictures in there because they didn't want pictures of the dog to come out. I didn't like to see it at all. I'm not one to complain or anything like that. Like I don't care that much, but that's not something that was in my list of things that I wanted to see that day was a decapitated dog.
Yeah, so how did the tour change your perspective on the haunted houses that you visited during Halloween Horror Nights?
So, I mean, a lot of times the thing about the tour is that you just have a better understanding of it. Sometimes you go through the houses and they're fun and they're scary, but you don't understand the messages that they're trying to convey. But this does a really good job of doing that, and they explain the story and they take the time with it and they explain the Easter eggs. So you just have a much bigger appreciation of it. That's the main thing that the tour does for me.
Okay. So were there any particular design elements or creative processes that really stood out to you during the tour?
Yeah, one thing that kind of stood out to me was in the Cinema Sins one, they had like an evil Santa Claus room or something. Like all this stuff was cliche, but they had an evil Santa Claus room, and they were pointing out that the border around the room, like each symbol had a meaning to it. And I remember thinking, they put this much effort into an element that nobody can see and nobody can understand, and it's only going to be here for 8 weeks. So it actually added like quite a bit of appreciation for the event.
Okay. So would you recommend the Unmasking the Horror Tour for fans who, they've already experienced Halloween Horror Nights, or do you think it's best to do this if you're a first timer at the event?
No, do the tour after you've done the house, and then do the tour again, or then do the house again. You want to do the house. You don't want to have spoilers, So do what I always do, and granted, this is an expensive route, is the first day we get express. You almost can't do Horror Nights without express unless you really like 90-minute waits for haunted houses. We do express the first day. The second day we do the tour, and then we stick around the second day and do the houses that we toured again, so we can have a better appreciation of it.
Now, you mentioned at the top of the podcast they had some interesting menu items. What were some of the things that you tried?
I thought you'd never ask, Don. I want to present to you Exhibit A.
It's food. I'm going to ask.
Right. So this is a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man s'more. So basically, for those that can't really see it that way, it's a graham cracker.
If you can't, if you can't see this, you definitely need to subscribe to our YouTube channel because this looks awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. That was one food item I did know about, and I was kind of looking forward to trying. But it's not like a baked marshmallow. They actually took a blowtorch to it to change it. And then let me pull up another one because we need to talk about this, because this is a nightmare for you, because you talk about picky eaters. Give me just a moment to get caught up with you here. But check this out. So they had two different corn dogs. One of which was a corn dog that had some stuff on it, and it had bugles, like the things you put on your fingers, stuck to the outside. I kind of like that. It was fine. This is the one that all of the rest of my group just absolutely loved, and I thought it was disgusting. This is a corn dog, and it's covered in cheesecake, mint cheesecake, and then it's got some sort of sparkly crap on the outside. Like, I could have swallowed the whole cheesecake thing if it wasn't mint, but I don't want a mint hot dog. But they didn't like rave about it, but they were like, yeah, that's the better one of the two. But this was interesting. It doesn't look that big on the screen. It takes forever to eat it though, because it's so thick that it's like 3 bites across. But you got to try some of the stuff. They have
innovative. I'll give it that. It looks innovative.
Yeah, they have a food booth for every one of the houses. So they either have something that's like a play on words, or they have
every house has its own food booth.
Yeah, and then the food booth is often decorated to look like the house too, like the Ghostbuster one looked like the Ghostbuster house. But there's a scene in one of the houses where I think it might have been Insidious, because somebody vomits in Insidious, the Red Door. It's a big part of the scene, and they have like baked beans that like look like vomit as one of the items. So some of it sounds unappetizing, but you got to be adventurous with it. Actually, yeah, you can see, for those of you watching on YouTube, in the background, I think that's a friend of mine, and that's the one with the bugles in it in the back. I don't remember all the other ingredients, but then the one with the cheesecake's the one in the foreground. But you have to try this stuff,
I mean, just for the food alone, I mean, it looks like it'd be worth going if you're a foodie fan. I mean,
they definitely give you more than a few opportunities to like expand your palate. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So it sounds like a great event. Is it something you're going to do again next year?
Yeah, I'll probably do the exact same tour next year, or the exact same trip. I'll do Unmasking the Horror, and then express Unmasking the Horror, and then do it again, and then probably stick around for the rest of the week. It seems like a formula that works well for me. I found a photo of, this is the other one with the bugles and the sparkles and stuff. I think this is the one that had the cheesecake in it that I didn't like, but it was the prettier of the two because I had sparkles, edible sparkles.
Yeah, but I mean, it's I think it really adds to the experience. In addition to just mazes, you get all these different menu items. So it's certainly, you hear this a lot of times, with people saying when you come to the parks during the Halloween season, you experience it in a whole different way than any other time of the year. And it certainly looks like that's the case here at Universal. So did you get to do any rides during this event?
There's only a couple rides open. We rode Escape from Gringotts one time. And that was because we had Express for the houses, which also works for the rides. Rip Ride Rocket is rumored to go away very soon, so we tried to get on that. We actually didn't end up riding it, and I don't have regrets. I hate that ride, but the girlfriend loves it, so I guess she'll just not get to ride it again.
She's got good taste. I like that ride.
I hate that ride, but anyway, the Mummy. So Rip Ride Rocket, the Mummy, Men in Black. We did ride a couple times, and then Gringotts was the other one that was okay. But there's enough to do to not really have to ride rides.
No. What about crowd wise? Did you find it to be manageable or just overcrowded?
No, it's way too crowded. I'll tell you that much. But it seemed like the wait times were a little bit less than previous years. And like the Express thing, like a lot of people bought the all season Express pass, and it sold out like the first day. So the rumor is that they sold less of them, and I think that might have assisted in keeping the lines moving a lot faster.
Okay, because that's one of the things that I hear a lot is everyone, I'd love to go, but it just seems like it's too crowded. But you wouldn't let that be a deterrent, right?
No, you have to play your cards right. Again, you have to pay to have a reasonable experience. If you have a way to get into Universal, if you've got an annual pass or you buy a ticket, you can do a thing called Stay and Screen, and that's when you kind of hang out in a corral at 5 o'clock, and then they open up some of the mazes early, so you wait about 20 minutes or so for. You can usually get like 2 or 3 of them done. There's usually 1 or 2 spots where they allow that. Express is always an option. It's not cheap. I think ours is about $150, but if you want a guaranteed way to be able to do all the houses, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, it seems like they've got that down pat there in terms of putting on a great event for their guests.
I agree. They have a show called Nightmare Fuel. I mentioned this last week, I think, but Nightmare Fuel is essentially the same show, but it's rewritten every year. So this year it was about it was like circus themed, and it was a frame story. So spoiler alert. But the voiceover at the beginning says it's a woman saying, no, it was a man saying, ever since I came across this woman, I'm doomed to see her die over and over again, and the clock just restarts. And they go through this whole thing, and finally, they do like magic tricks and stuff. The whole thing's like a lot of fire spinners and stuff like that, which is great in a non-air conditioned, non-enclosed arena when it's 95 degrees at night. But the cool part was, so there was a big magic trick at the end, and you expected her to like do it, but the magic trick, like, I guess it goes wrong, and they just pull her off stage, and then it goes right back to like the commentary at the beginning. It's the spotlight on him saying, I'm doomed to relive to watch her die. So it's like the whole thing goes full circle. So it's really cool. I would recommend that show.
Well, Ryan, sounds like you had a fantastic time. I live vicariously through your stories that you tell me about this, because I haven't had a chance to get down there the last couple of years for the Halloween events, whether it's at Walt Disney World or Universal, but certainly something that I'd like to change in the future there, and make this part of my annual fall trips that I do. It just sounds like such a great time that you had there, and so if someone's interested in doing these, what's really, give them, what's the best way to go about getting your tickets, and when do you need to do this by?
I mean, I always buy mine through the Universal app. Tickets to individual nights, if you're buying a ticket, I know that there are nights that sell out, but it's not like a thing for horror nights specifically. For Mickey's, buy them when they go on sale, because you'll start seeing dates sell out within a few days. But for horror nights, just buy whenever. But for Express and the tours and stuff like that, you might want to start planning early and start going early.
All right. Well, stick around for the pick six.
Actually, I've got one more thing to share with you. I don't know if I've told you about this or not. You'll love this. This is not Halloween related, but I did get to go behind the scenes, which is, for those of you who are familiar with Epcot, it's a backstage tour of Living with the Land. This is an example of it. So, I got to see more about how they do their botany and stuff like that, but also you got to see like backstage areas of the ride too. Like while we're doing this tour, the boats were going by and people were looking at us like, what are those idiots doing like in the display? But Living with the Land is one of those things where you're always like so close to all this stuff, but so far away. And I finally got to go into it. They, so I would recommend that. That was only like $35 for that tour. And it's offered several times a day.
Yeah, that looks very interesting.
Yeah, but if you don't necessarily have to have an interest in botany. Honestly, if you just ride Living with the Land a lot and you want to see it from a different perspective, I would recommend it. We had a tour guide. Her name was W. That's her nickname. Did a fantastic job. One of the things that we did get to see was a plant. They named it Stanley for some reason, but it was kind of like a Venus flytrap. You touch it and the leaves like close up. So we were all like touching this plant and the leaves close up. They stay closed for like 10 minutes and they reopen. So that was a really cool experience. And then just being able to see the ride from a different perspective was really cool too. We also got to feed the fish. But that's another thing where you could probably do it on a whim. I bought it like 6 weeks in advance thinking that it was like really hard to get. But I looked on the times and it's just everything was available, So that's offered like every hour on the hour or something. You can purchase it through the MDX, the My Disney Experience app, and I'd recommend checking it out.
Sounds
I
like
just
one of
want
those
to throw
hidden
that in
gems.
there somewhere.
Yeah, it
Cool.
sounds
Yeah,
like a hidden gem there.
it truly is. But as you were saying, we got the pick six coming up next. So stick around.